Good morning, everyone. I am Chabelita di Baltar, and for this morning, we are going to have survey on poetry. The title of the poem is My Last Farewell by Jose P. Rizal. So first, we have identifying elements. Persona. Persona refers to the voice of a particular kind of character. In this poem, entitled My Last Farewell, we conclude that Jose P. Rizal was the persona since he was the narrator or the speaker itself. Theme. Theme refers to the topic or central idea. In this poem, the theme was found in the 13th stanza, where it says, I bade goodbye to my adored fatherland, to my parents, friends, and to the small children. So in this line, we conclude that it was the central idea because this poem is all about goodbyes or the last message of Rizal for the Philippines, for his family, for his friends, to prayerful men, and to next generation Filipinos. Imagery. Imagery refers to a literary device used to help reader visualize the informations of the text by the use of words that appeals to the reader's senses. These are sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. We have seen visual imagery in third stanza. I die as I see tints on the sky begin to show, and at last announce the day after a gloomy night. If you need a you to dye your mutational glow, pour my blood, and at the right moment spread its soul, and gild it with a reflection of your nascent light. It is evident that he used visual imagery because of the word hue, which means color. The meaning of the first and second lines in that stanza describe Rizal's execution happened during sunrise. In addition, he used visual senses in his use of color. In addition, he used visual senses in his poetic use of color. In the third and fourth lines, he used color red as blood and gold as sunlight. All in all, he uses visual imagery in this stanza. So the last one, figurative languages. It is when you use a words or phrases that doesn't have its literal meaning. So under figurative language, we have metaphor. It refers to a figure of speech that directly compares two different things. So in this poem, My Last Farewell, we found an example of metaphor in sixth stanza where it says, if over my tomb someday you would see blow a simple humble flower amidst thick grasses. So in this line, Rizal likens himself to a simple humble flowers amidst thick grasses. So that thick grasses, he refers to the unrelenting forces of society, which pointed out the evilness of Spanish rules in the Philippines. Second, figurative language that we have found is personification. Personification is under also in figurative language that refers to giving of human characteristics to non-human things. So in the seventh stanza of the poem, we found an example of personification where it says, let the moon with soft, gentle light me descry. Let the dawn send forth its fleeting, brilliant light. In murmurs grave allow the wind to sigh. And should a bird descend on my cross and alight, let the bird intone a song of peace over my sight. These lines shows Rizal's love for nature, that he purely personified his emotion that he has felt during his fight for freedom.
Stanza 1. These are the words of one about to die for his country. He expresses no regret but only gladness, knowing that in giving his life, He is giving his country the greatest gift any citizen could offer. Stanza 2. Here, Rizal says that it does not matter where one dies, but why one dies and to what purpose. Whether it's scaffold, open field, conflict, or martyrdom's site, all death hold the same honor if given for home and country. In the third stanza, it says, Rizal's execution was set at sunrise. Thus, the meaning of the first and second lines. He employs the visual senses in his poetic use of color, and then in the third and fourth lines adds the bright red tint of his blood to the scene and gilds it with golden sunlight. The use of these devices ignites passion in the reader as it is felt 100 times more so in the writer even without explicit use of signifying words feeling. The first stanza is this. Since Rizal's childhood, even as other children dream of childish things, Rizal dreamed of seeing his country free, esteemed, and with head held high. In fifth stanza, in fifth stanza, here he shows her praise. He shows in fifth stanza. He showers her with praise. He is his life's fancy, his ardent and passionate desire. He shouts, "Hail!" as many would to their other god. He says in the third line that it is sweet to fall so that his country may acquire fullness, and then continues on in the succeeding lines. To die is to give you life, but his joy does not end in the act of dying, but continues beyond the grave, where he shall sleep in his country's mystic land through eternity. As one dies for God, Rizal dies for country. And as one looks forward to heaven, is Rizal's heaven also. In these lines, at least, lies in being buried in the land of his ancestors. In the sixth stanza, Rizal likens his soul to that of a simple humble flower amidst with thick grasses. The use of this comparison says a lot about how Rizal sees himself: timid, simple, humble, surrounded by the unrelenting forces of society. He imagines that after his death, he will live on in a bosom of his motherland and never cease to enjoy her love, which he begs her to express with a kiss. In seventh stanza, Rizal's love for nature is again depicted in these next four lines. It is interesting that he enumerates the moon, the dawn, the wind, and the bird to pay homage to his grave, yet does not mention close friends or specific person. Perhaps it is a simple image of his reunion with nature that he wants to bring to his mind. Perhaps it is also an expression of the loneliness and isolation that he has felt and continues to feel in, in his fight for freedom. In the eighth stanza, the mentioned here is a friend is the closest he gets to company, and the mention of God in the fourth line is the closest he gets to praying for a spiritual heaven that Rizal beseeches his country to pray for, that his soul may rest in God, is in line with the Roman Catholic belief that all men are sinners and that salvation is to be earned and cannot be determined before the grave. In ninth stanza, in these four lines, he gives his motherland a list of things he wished her to pray for. He remembers all of the martyrs who have suffered the same fate as he will, who have died for their country, the mothers, wives, and the children they have left behind, who suffer no less for being abandoned. He is he is also in a hopeful closing note. He asks her to pray for herself. In the tenth stanza, clearly has not imagined that a monument would eventually be built over his grave and has pictured his final resting place as a humble cemetery where he shall, even after death, sing a song of devotion for his motherland. In 11th stanza, Rizal wanted to be plowed by men. When people no longer recognized his grave and scattered, then turned into the dust that covers the land which he had died for. Well, it actually happens in real life. The execution of Rizal remains buried in unmarked grave. However, years later, they were brought into their final resting place in the base of the monument at Luneta. In 11th stanza, it says, the meaning says, then it does not matter that you should forget me. In 11th stanza, the first line in this stanza begins the following assumptions that our hero ashes have now been spread over the land. Rizal envisions that once he has returned to her in this manner, it will no longer matter if the country forgets him because he will be with her everywhere as dust in the atmosphere, blowing in the skies, in the wind, and still singing songs and murmuring words of devotion. In 12th stanza, the meaning says, here we come to the more submissive yet hopeful tone. Rizal's bids farewell to his one great love, his country first, and yet looks forward to being with God, where there are no slaves, tyrants, or hangmen. And lastly, the 14th stanza. To close, Rizal now finally mentions specific people, parents, brothers, and friends of his childhood. In other translations, the fourth line reads, Adios, sweet tender foreigner, my friend, my happiness, which historians have interpreted that allude to Josephine Bracken, the daughter of Anglo-Saxon father and the Chinese mother, whom many believe, although it is frequently challenged, he secretly married her before his death.
Relaying the message. The lessons we get in the poem is that being a hero, it doesn't need to have superpowers. A true hero is someone who is willing to fight his or her family, loved ones, friends, and even the freedom of our country. And that was Dr. Jose P. Rizal, our national hero. He showed us that it's not about fighting, using a sword or anything that can hurt others. A pen can also seek freedom. In this poem, My Last Farewell, is about Rizal's upcoming death in the Pitan, as he wanted to honor and tells us how generally pleasing his homeland. In fact, this poem proves that even he'll be killed, he did not take back his beliefs. He also used the poem to finally say goodbye to his family, friends, and his loved ones. And it makes us realize that we will do everything for love, everything for what it takes.